Okay, now I'm going to show you how to actually draw with the wall tool. And some of the other tools that you'll see in here you can use with other drawing tools like doors and windows and that type of thing. But mainly we're going to deal with the wall tool. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to come into wall and change my wall settings to the correct exterior wall. Go up here to favorites, choose my exterior 2x6, hit apply, and say OK. Now, up here on the top, there's a number of different drawing methods. This one here allows us to do single segment, multiple segment, rectangle, or a rotated rectangle. There's also the curved walls if you want to add a curved wall. I'm going to start with a rectangle because I want to have a 30 by 30 cabin, so it ends up being square. Come down here. When the cursor turns to a check mark on the X, that's the origin, it'll snap to that point, and I get my automatic helper lines that show up. Click on that, and you'll see that I have helper lines. I also have a baseline, which is that bold line. That's the line that the computer is using as the distance. You'll see in the tracker it shows dimension 1 and dimension 2, and that's using the baseline to figure those dimensions. If I wanted to have that on the inside, I could go up here to the top and hit that button, and now that baseline is on the inside. You can also do it in the center if you wish. Now, since I want to have a 30 by 30 cabin, I want to come up here and I want it on the outside. Now, sometimes when ArchiCAD starts up, for some reason the tracker may not show up. And if that's the case, you can come up here to this button right here, and it says Show Hide Tracker. You can click that at any time. You'll see that it hit it. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it back in. Now, to get my 30 by 30 cabin, it's real simple. All I do is I just type in my distance, use the down arrow, type in my next distance, and hit enter. And I now have my 30 by 30 space. I can go ahead now and start drawing my interior walls. Now, what I want to do is I want to put a bathroom up in this corner, and I want to have it 6 feet out from here, and it's going to go down 10 feet and come over. First thing I need to do is change my wall style. So go back to wall settings. When this comes up, go back to my favorites and choose my interior wall. And I say OK. Now, to be able to specify that I want it to be 6 feet along here, I'm going to use what's called a special snap. Up here at the top, there are these special snap points. And if you hit this little down arrow next to them, it'll show you what they are. Now, right now it's set at half. There's divisions, percentage, and then there's distance. Now, I want it set at distance, but I don't want 10 feet. So I have to go back up here and come down and say Set Special Snap Value. I can choose this, and all I want to do right now is change the distance. I want it to be 6 feet. It'll assume the feet when I enter the 6. Just to double check, okay, yes, it's set at distance, yes, it's set at 6 feet. Now, when I hover my cursor over the wall, you'll notice these little hash marks show up. Now, it'll depend on which side that I show up, because I have a 6-inch difference in length between the outside of the wall and the inside. And so you can see that 6-inch show up. It also measures from the end that the closest to the cursor. So if I want 6 feet from this side, I would come over on this end of the wall and it would show up there. And now all I have to do is I want it from this side, so I'm going to come back over here. When I get over that hash mark, the check mark will show up. It'll snap there, so I'm going to go ahead and choose my start point. You notice I'm in the wrong mode. I don't want a rectangle. So I can come up here, push and hold that button down, and I want multi-segment. So I choose that. Now it gives me a segment. Now the thing is, I want my wall to be 6 feet from this point to the outside of the wall. So I need to change my baseline. Come up here, choose that baseline, and now it's in the right spot. You'll notice you get helper lines. The helper lines will help you get to 90 degrees or 60 degrees, 45 degrees, most of the common ones. Now if you want to have a lock at any of those, you can hold down the shift key and it will lock at whatever angle the helper is set at. So I want 90. I'm set at that, and now I could use my pencil and I can go any number of places. I could say, well, I wanted it 6 feet down here, I could do that. Since I don't need to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to say 10 feet with my helper, and I hit enter. That automatically sets that segment. Now I just need to close it up. I can go over here, and when I get the little eyeball looking cursor, that tells me it's going to go ahead and snap perpendicular to that wall. So I go ahead and click on that. I don't need to draw any more walls, so I can go ahead and say OK. Now, let's say I want to draw a short half wall that's curved. That's going to be my bar over here for the kitchen. Come up here, and I'm going to use a 3-point line, and I'm going to start, and I don't want to have it at 6 feet. I want to have it at a different distance. Well, let's do divisions. So I'll choose divisions, and I'll come up, and I'm set at 3, and that's about where I want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that as my start point. My second point, I want it to be kind of out here, and then I want my curve to be about that big. And I could enter that curve if I wanted to, but I'm just going to go ahead and eyeball it. And then I can check and say, well, how much of this do I want? I'm going to check there. Okay, so there we go. I have my curved wall. Problem is, that curved wall is 8 feet tall. If we were to look at it in 3 dimensions, we'll switch over to that here quickly, you're going to see that that wall is already 8 feet tall. Problem is, that's not what I want. So what we'll do, we'll come in here, and we can zoom in a little bit more. I can use the arrow tool, and I can select this wall. Now when I select it, handlebars show up. These handlebars can be used to edit things. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to grab that handlebar. And you'll see that right now the tool that on the flyout that I have allows me to move the wall around. It's not what I want. I can make it go different elevations. I can rotate it, all sorts of things. I can even angle it if I want. All I want to do is change the height. So I'm going to stretch the height, and my tracker shows back up, and I'm going to not really stretch it, but shrink it. And I'm going to bring it down, and I want it to be 4 feet tall. So I'm just going to enter 4 and hit enter. Now, if we were to rotate around a little bit, you're going to see there's my wall. Okay? We go back to two-dimensional view. It doesn't really look any different, but it is shorter now. So that's how you can use some of these special snaps to put in your doors or your walls and manipulate them. You can also use special snaps with door and window commands and all sorts of things like that. To draw on the second floor, it's really simple. We'll switch to the second floor, and it's already set up as a trace reference. If it wasn't, you could go to the first floor, you can go down here and say show as trace reference. And then what will happen is your walls that you drew on the first floor will automatically show up. You can then use these walls as snap points if you wish. Oops, I don't want to do that. I'm going to do this. You can use those as snap points for your walls. Obviously, I don't want to keep that because it's not going to work very well. But you'll see that it doesn't select anything when you try to select to do any type of editing.